live now. Welcome everybody to the first episode of TalkFeed. My name is Ali, and I'm going to be your host. In this podcast, we're going to focus on every single thing. We're going to talk about sports, we're going to talk about nutrition, psychology, we're going to meet different people, different places, and we're going to have a great time. So my first guest today is a friend of mine and also a really expert guy and in sports, martial arts, and also in nutrition. Robbie Scott, welcome.
You're far too kind, sir. Thank you for having me.
Come. So, can you tell me a little about yourself, your background, what do you do?
Well, my passion's always been martial arts. I got into fighting from a very, very young age, probably for the wrong reasons at first. I then started training. I then went to university, but threw the whole thing off, completely became unfocused, got out of university, became refocused, ended up moving to the Middle East, and here we are today, I suppose.
Oh, that's great. But why martial arts? Why did you stick to that? You never changed. You didn't go anywhere else.
I had a sick, strange fantasy for violence. No, I don't know if it's that, but no, it was one of these where I was, even as a younger kid, like everyone in my family's a very sporty family. Everyone's, if not competed in sports, then maybe coached sports or taken part in sports or done it as a hobby. And it always involved the ball. Like everyone, it was either kicking a ball with your foot, throwing a ball with your hand, hitting a ball with a racket. And, you know, something would be on the TV and I'd start looking at it and be like, oh, those two guys with gloves on are kind of hitting each other though. Still, I kind of like that. And then, of course, they switch the channel and I'm like, hey. You know, so as much as my family initially tried to veer me away from it, I couldn't really escape the fact that I'm drawn to one-on-one competition. Maybe not even the violence side of it, just the fact that you don't have a teammate to blame, you don't have a coach to blame, really. It's
more
just
individual.
Exactly. It's you and an opponent in there, and, well, referee. So I just like that competitive aspect of it. It's gripping, it's adrenaline-fueled, especially when you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's unrivaled. And it just never really left me. And because of that, I dabbled in so many martial arts. And then the more the UFC and other brands like that became popular, the more it started to come into my head, like, you could probably actually make a career out of this somehow. So that's where it began. And the passion hasn't died, not once.
So you started at a young age, like 16, 17, or?
I started boxing when I was, I started Muay Thai first. I went out with one of my parents with the intention of joining a boxing gym. Mm-hmm. We couldn't find one. And as we're leaving town after we'd nearly given up, we stumbled upon, at the time I couldn't pronounce this word at all, Muay Thai.
Yeah.
You know, now that's become like a regular part of conversation around like martial arts and everyday conversation. But at the time it wasn't really big in my area. So I'm, what? That's an M followed by a U. Couldn't even pronounce it. So of course walk into it thinking it might be some kind of like Jean Cut Do martial art where they're all in white gis and going, ha, making all these funny noises and doing stupid things with the hands. No, it was the real deal. So technically that was the first martial art I did.
And then after Muay Thai, what did you do?
And then it was boxing when I was like 13 or 14. Then I just focused mostly on rugby until I left school. That and some of my academic studies, not all of them. Sorry, mother and father, love you. And then, yeah, after that it was university, stopped pretty much everything. And then in the summer, I'd start it again, and then I'd stop it again when I'm back at university, and I'd start it again. The most uncommitted person. I never lost a passion for it, but zero commitment. Zero commitment whatsoever.
I think that's normal. At that certain age, you just want to try everything.
Unfortunately,
yes.
yes.
And then once you grow older, you want to try, you know what, this is my passion. This is what I like. This is what I want to do.
The thing that really sunk me into it, like, almost permanently was catch wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That was fascinating to me. It's like
what's the difference between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the...
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu originated initially as a Japanese martial art, which the Brazilians then kind of adopted and adapted to make it their own. They added some new things, but the unpopular opinion is that it stole a lot of its ideas from catch wrestling, because that's been around for like millennia almost.
Yeah, I've heard.
And the reason why I was drawn to catch wrestling more is because, I mean, again, going back to the deep-seated issues I might have had as a kid, like, it's all about how what's the best way I can hurt you. You know, like how can I break that joint? How can I snap that body part? How can I make it so you can't breathe? How can everything to make something painful? That's what defines it almost. And catch wrestlers deny this sometimes, but for the most part, it's like, how can I make this as physically uncomfortable and torturous for you as humanly possible? And they'll find a way. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's more about like the fine art and the finesse and
there's
the
more
smooth
rules to it.
Yeah, but no, to an extent. But then there's some other rules in catch wrestling that might shock you. You know, like that you're allowed to pin them, and that's considered part of a win. That can accumulate to a win. In jiu-jitsu, there's no pins. It's like you either tap him out or you go to a decision on points. If that's the rule set that you're fighting
when you
under.
pin it, that's wrestling also in judo, right?
Yeah, that's in judo as well. Yeah, in essentially some grappling arts have a different terminology for it, but it's basically, can I hold the back of your shoulders on the mat for longer than 5 seconds? There's variations to that rule, but for the most part, they tend to fit around there. Even in professional wrestling, the choreographed stuff, they pin the shoulders down, they lift the leg up, and the referee goes 1, 2, and then it's always at the last second, the dude just kicks out of it. And it's like, this is very realistic. We bought into that as children, didn't we?
And then when did you decide you want to do MMA? And it's different because MMA, the world of MMA, is totally different than other martial arts. It's a kind of more aggressive sport than the others one.
It was definitely perceived as it back in the day. I mean, you got to understand, man. I'm sure if anyone's seen an MMA podcast before or heard an interview with some prevalent MMA stars, this will be old news to you. But in the 90s, when it first became like not even mainstream, but even people were aware of it, it was banned.
Yeah,
it was banned everywhere. Like, it was advertised on TV, and you can't even imagine it being advertised this days. It's crazy. They have blood splatters on the TV. This big, and I'm about to abuse the microphone settings for the first time, so apologies to TalkFeed. This guy with a nasally voice would come on, and it's like, no holes barred. 2 men leave, and only one.
So it's like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, it's like, and that's how it was marketed, and it had all these like blood splatter effects, and people would come in, and before there literally were no rules. One guy won a fight, I'm not joking. Well, there's 2 instances. This will get a giggle out of you. One guy won a fight via chin to the eye. Yeah, right? That was a Japanese promotion, I think. And then someone in the UFC won it via groin strikes.
Oh.
That's a video I will show you off camera. But yeah, and he literally won. He pinned the guy down in a position called side control, and he started smacking him in the... So, and he won. That was not allowed back in the day. And then Dana White and the Zuffa Corporation ended up inheriting it. They bought them out for a specific sum of money. I can't remember what it was. And they started to adopt these rule sets like an actual athletic commission would for things like boxing and kickboxing, despite the fact that kickboxing wasn't very big. But then it was, you can't hit them on certain points of the head. You can't throw a certain type of strike at a certain angle.
It became more professional.
Yeah, you definitely can't hit them in that region that I was just alluding to. There's no gouging in the eye. There's no entering any orifice at all, like the ear, the mouth, or the nose. You can't do anything like you would in a street fight, You're not allowed to kick them on the ground. Japan didn't ban that straight away. They kept that for a while. And then, just more and more after that, even little things like grabbing the fence with either your fingers or your toes. I found that out the hard way in my last fight. I thought it was just fingers. And I put my toes in the fence when I was on top of a guy, and then the referee slapped my foot. I was like, oh, so I can't do that. Okay, brilliant. So there's actually more rules than you think, And it's honestly, without trying to sound biased towards a sport, it is for our safety.
Yeah,
it really is, because these nerves here that attach the cranium to the spine, you hit that in the wrong place, you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. So they say no strikes into this area.
They want to make sure everyone is safe and the sport continues and grows, and
exactly,
And so you've been fighting here in Kuwait in local competitions, and I know that you did Cage Warriors, right?
I did compete in Cage Warriors in my last contest. Yes.
So what's the difference? What's the difference between local competitions and Cage Warrior? I know Cage Warrior is like a little bit professional stage, but here's lacks a lot of things.
Are you trying to send a lawsuit in my general direction,
I'm not saying,
sir?
but I think it's a new sport in the region.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, it's not as old. It's not as new as I thought it was. There's a guy called Matt Hughes. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's one of the Hall of Fame UFC fighters from the 90s and the early 2000s. And he still fought into the late 2000s and early 2010s, actually. But I think he lost either his first or second fight in Kuwait.
Oh.
and it was Shihan Faisal Musallem who was refereeing that fight. It was his organization, I believe.
Oh.
And that was 1999.
Interesting.
And I believe it was in, it was somewhere like Abu Khalifa or Mahbula or somewhere down like the south, you know? So it's bizarre to think that guys like that were here. But I think Chuck Liddell came here. I don't think he fought here, but he came here. Someone told me just the other day that Conor McGregor actually went to Jordan to compete with Cage Warriors, and I wasn't aware of that one. I know it's not Kuwait, but still the Middle East.
Yeah, Middle East. But that was like, I think, more than 10 years, right?
Maybe like 2013. So you're looking like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, but the last few years, I guess 4 years, the whole MMA thing grew in Kuwait. Everyone is a fan of it. Everyone knows about it. You know, fighters became popular. People are starting, like people are looking for the news. Oh, what's going on? When's the next event? When this guy? We want like big fighters to come to fight in Kuwait. But you fought here in Kuwait.
I have many times.
And do you think it's in a good place, or it needs more improvement, or it's still like lacks a lot of elements?
It needs exposure. That would be the first thing I'd say, because I'm sure you don't mind me saying this. You guys have got the money.
Yeah.
And so do the people who run these organizations, but you wouldn't think it sometimes. And that's not a dig at anyone particular. I ain't naming anyone. I ain't trying to dig at anyone. But you would think that if this is where their passion lies, and this is like a serious endeavor that we're attempting to continue on, you'd think...
You need people to invest
especially with the old GFC days. You used to have gladiator fighting championships. That was started here in Kuwait as well. Then became Wawan MMA, because that's a family that owns it and runs it. And in the GFC days, we had some big fighters. We had some people who'd been on The Ultimate Fighter, some old UFC fighters, or who maybe like got released from the promotion. So we had some big names for a while, and they had like maybe 3 or 4 events a year. Then they changed the name to Wawan, and they rebranded it. They redid the color scheme, the quality of the videos.
I think it looks better now.
It's man, the production for Wawan, you can't say anything bad about it. Like, and they always get these guests, like famous guests to be out. Like Scott Adkins came here, the guy who plays Boyka.
Yeah.
They had Anthony Johnson, who's a 2-time UFC title contender. They had Todd Duffy, who was a UFC top 10 heavyweight. Ray Elby, who was an Ultimate Fighter competitor. Paulo Filho, who was Pride and WEC champion. They've even fought in the last one, actually. Yeah, man, a lot of names. Like I bumped into Paulo Filho after one of my fights for a while, and I was like, hi, I've been a fan of you since I was like 10. What are you doing here, And he had a tattoo on his face and everything. I was like, this isn't real, no way. But yeah, they looked like they were pulling all the clout for it. And then all of a sudden, like, it went from 3 events a year to 2 events a year. And then 1 event a year. And then I haven't seen anything from them since last year, It was meant to be one. I mean, I got offered a fight in September with someone that I'm actually quite familiar with now. And then they said, now it's going to be October. Well, now it's going to be December. Well, now 2020, inshallah. And you know that never means anything. And then they said, okay, Shahr Ithnain, February. And then still, we're nearly in February, dude, and I ain't heard nothing about that. So obviously, I had to turn my attention elsewhere.
Yeah.
Especially if you want the UFC looking at you, which is, if any fighter tells you that, the UFC ain't the end goal, they might not be lying, but there's a white lion there somewhere,
Yeah, of course. If you go to the UFC, that's the best exposure you'll ever get.
Essentially.
Yeah.
But there's some other promotions that are trying to compete with them now. Maybe not necessarily compete, that might be the incorrect term, but there's an organization that's based out of, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, Singapore, I believe, or Malaysia, called ONE FC. They drew in something like 20 million global viewers or something for one of their events, and there wasn't even anyone famous on it. But because of that particular region, like Malaysia's got a huge population, Indonesia's got a huge population, Singapore's a smaller place, but it's very dense. Well, the Thais love fighting, dude. Have you seen them? Yeah. So, I mean, they draw in a lot, and all their local terrestrial channels broadcast that. I don't think they even have to buy pay-per-view. Yeah. So a lot of eyes come on it, and that's how big fights in the UK, when I was a kid, got really big. Instead of trying to buy a pay-per-view, they put it on terrestrial channels where everyone could watch, especially the boxing. When British boxers used to compete, you know how the Brits get behind their own, right?
Yeah,
so
true.
That's how it went. So, I mean, there's promotions on the rise. I don't want to name too many of them because obviously I'm kind of like Team UFC. That's where I want to be. But it's good for the sport. It can never be bad for the sport that there's other branches on the up and up.
If there's
that are trying to,
competition, it's always gonna be good.
it's always healthy,
Yeah, it's always healthy.
for sure.
So that's your background in the martial art area part. But now, then what about training? Training. Can you tell me more about training? You're a personal trainer also.
Correct.
And you have also you've been working here in Kuwait since 2015.
2015. It was April the 4th, 2015 when I touched down in this country for the first time ever.
So tell me about that.
Well, the training or working over here?
No, training and working over here.
With the training, I mean, I noticed that, I mean, anyone who's been to university can relate to this, or anyone who just went through a time where they were a little lazy. I gained a lot of weight.
Oh.
Despite the fact that I was athletic from a very young age and always took part in sports. Unfortunately, again, as I referred to, always contained the ball, but I always wanted to do combat sports. But as soon as I'd like...
You don't like football, man. I can tell.
No, it's... what do you call it over here? Soccer? Yes, swerve that boy. Yeah. But no, but rugby was always my thing. You know, not American football where the idiots put themselves full of steroids and just put all the pads all over the body. No, we like a real man's game. Rugby's a good one. World Cup was good just recently, but him, they were. I was watching that, and I was always just like naturally athletic growing up because I was always competing. Mm. And then when you get to university and you get involved in things that aren't necessarily good for your body, then things spiral out of control. Now, this might not sound a lot to some people, but I reached about 90 kilos, which doesn't sound very heavy, but for my frame and for the weight class I currently compete in,
I totally understand, yeah.
It don't look good on me, 90 kilos.
Yeah, of course.
I look like I'm a chubby man when I've got 90 kilos carrying around. It ain't a good look. So, and I noticed that, and people around me were starting to point that out at the time, and I was like, oh, I got to do something about this. So I kind of like devised my own process just through YouTube and looking at on Google alone. All right, how can I lose weight and how can I still remain relatively strong and be able to compete with other humans on an athletic level? You know, I blinked, and then 6 months later, I was 20 kilos down, and I had like abs. I was like, oh, well, I suppose this is how you're supposed to do it. So I was like, okay, I did it for myself. Maybe I could do this for other people. Yeah. You know, and I already got the information in my head about the macronutrients and nutrition and hypertrophy and all these little buzzwords that you hear on the internet. Sometimes you kind of go, that's more than 4 syllables. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. But so I started researching it anyway, and then someone was like, you can. And so I started helping people around the gym. Well, if you want to lose like 2 or 3 kilos, all you got to do, and label off, and people will be like, you can make money out of this. Like, you could literally become a personal trainer and you could make money for doing what you're doing now in this gym. I was just like, okay. So the first thing I Googled when I got home was personal training courses. And 2013, sure enough, that's exactly what I did. And 6 weeks later, after taking a intensive training course, and I did a nutrition course, and Olympic lifting course, kettlebell course, gym-based boxing, but that doesn't mean anything. I had a job 2 weeks after I graduated from that. Oh. So I started making a living real quick. I started my own business out of it was kind of like I don't know if a timeshare is the correct word, but basically I kind of work in a gym, but my loyalties aren't to that gym. Like everything, all the money I make from clients is mine. They don't take any of it, So I considered it my own business at the time. Maybe it's a little bit skewed, that perception. But it's a personal business, And after 2 years of doing that, like, I realized I'm doing a lot of hours and I'm earning a good amount of money, but I can't help but think that I could be earning more. And of course, I start sending my CV out to places, just, basically throwing at a wall and seeing what sticks. And I get an email through my Hotmail at the time, and when you get those spam emails and they aren't even spelled correctly. Prince from Nigeria. Prince from Nigeria wants you to buy his cow or whatever it is, and by the way, there's $1 million sitting underneath a bed somewhere in Nigeria, And it's the first line of it was, "Good evening, Mr. Robert. I hope this email has find you well." I remember exactly how it was worded, and I went, and I was so close to putting it in the junk mail. So close to putting it in the junk mail. But it said, my name is, I won't name them. Contact me on this number. Won't say the number. So we contact, and they said, okay, here's my Skype. Let's set up an interview. And I was like, this is just going to be, there's no way this is real. And then I realized that at the end of their name, it had the letters Q and 8. And at the time, I'm not familiar with that abbreviation, but obviously I know that Kuwait's a country. But there's 200 countries. I can't know everything
Yeah.
about all of
Yeah,
them,
it's
you know? And it's a small country, dude, you know? So we get into this interview on Skype, and it's a real person, and it's a real job offer, but I'm still skeptical. I'm still like, okay, how exactly are you going to get me out there? How exactly am I going to find, like, accommodation, transport? I'm not buying. I don't buy this. But then, sure enough, I get an email through that the flights have been booked through Qatar Airways. 3 weeks later, I was here, and I never looked back. That was it. And I've continued
that one email that you're about to delete.
Literally
Changed your life.
Yeah, and I continued the same line of work when I got over here. But luckily, because there ain't much extracurricular activities to do over here, and the same distractions that's in Western culture, it's a little easy, despite the fact that the food is damn good over here.
Yeah.
And it's
You want food? Come to Kuwait.
Literally the capital of food now, in my opinion. But there's not too many other distractions other than the food. So it's like, go to the gym, go to work, go to the gym, which suits me down to the ground. I'm one of these weirdos that actually likes training and likes getting hit for some bizarre reason. So that was cool with me. I was like, okay, this is a good place to refocus. I'll have my second professional fight over here, thank you. And I won that fight by knockout in less than a minute. So obviously I was doing something right.
Yeah.
You know?
If you're just training and working, what else? I think you're going to perform very well. So after you came to Kuwait and start training, you became also a fighter here, you did competition. So what's your secret, man? What's your nutrition plan? Do you eat do you have your own way? Do you follow like a rule book, or you created your own thing? Or
how much are you going to pay me for this information?
We'll talk about that later.
I want a deposit put in, please. I kind of formed my own. Like, people think that I've got like a unique way of weight loss. I haven't. It's literally calories in versus calories out, and then there's some little nuances that can tweak like the linearity of it, if you know what I mean. Like, people just want to see the scale drop in a straight line, like on a Venn diagram, going all the way down. Realistically, that's not how it works. But there's ways that you can tweak it into thinking that, okay, maybe it is becoming a linear process. But my specialty, as damn good as I am at weight loss and fat loss, weight cutting is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And I was inspired to start researching that because a lot of people do a lot of bad things to their body in order to try and achieve an unrealistic weight for competition.
Yeah.
And it really annoyed me because, you could look up stats on Google right now. How many people die playing insert sport here?
Yeah.
And it could literally be things like golf or darts or fishing. And it will tell you this many people die on average per year doing this sport. MMA or UFC or mixed martial arts, whatever you want to call it don't really have many.
Yeah.
But I looked into all of them. I found 5 at professional. I think 3 or 4 were at professional and 1 or 2. But yeah.
Past few years,
Oh yeah, but them dudes just clock into each other at like 50 miles an hour, like head first. Like, obviously they're going to get concussions and get problems later in life. But I looked at the stats on MMA and the death rate was really low. And obviously promoters talk about this all the time. They say, oh, no one dies in our sport. It's like, but then you look it up and it's like, oh, actually, that's kind of true. But I was like, why are they dying? Like, what caused them? Did they literally just get their head beaten in so badly that they were beaten to an inch of their life? And then you look at it and it's like, oh, this man dehydrated himself 20 kilos before the fight. And I was like, well, yes. Yeah, and everyone relies on dehydration for weight cutting. I was like, no, there has to be a better way than that. There has to be a better way than that. Surely you can't just crash diet for a week or 2 and not drink anything, sweat your guts out in the sauna, and expect to be at peak performance. There's no way you can do it. So I started researching methods on like
steroids.
I don't know if steroids are particularly conducive to weight loss or rapid weight loss, but fat loss and muscle growth simultaneously is definitely achievable. But even if steroids were allowed, which they're not, and I'm glad they're not, the first thing I would not recommend to someone is, oh, you got 10 kilos to lose? Take this needle in your arm. No, I'd never do that. I'd never do that.
That's bad.
It's not conducive to the sport.
There's so many cases in Kuwait. People are dead just because of using steroids. You know, they started going to the gym to lose weight and then end up doing bodybuilding. I'm not accusing bodybuilding of because it's killing people, no, but people are using this steroids thing and you're ruining your life. If you don't die, you're gonna have other problems, side effects. Your kidney, so many other.
Well,
problems.
at least increases the chances of decreasing your lifespan. That's the biggest issue for me when you take steroids. All right, maybe you don't die as a result directly of the steroids, but your heart rate increases.
It's gonna hit you,
yeah. The growth hormone that's released in your body and the unhealthy amount of testosterone. I mean, your heart can literally grow in size to a size that it's not even meant to be. And then when you lose all of that, that mass that you've gained, that lean mass, that chunky stuff that you see on people, the organs don't shrink. They still have to work overtime because you did that to them. Yeah, and I won't talk about other organs, but it affects something else too.
Yeah, it affects
and in women too, In women, it can be considered even more dangerous because men are supposed to have testosterone in the system. Women are not supposed to have, especially that much testosterone in the system. So it's damn dangerous for women. Hell yeah.
So you mean you created your own? So a lot of people will I want to try keto. I want to try, Atkins. I want to try this. I want to try that. I want to try this. But I come to realize that you know what your body needs. So this is what you did. You know what your body needed. This is the right food for me. This is the time where I should take carbs. This is where I, offload carb. So you created your own way. So you don't follow a certain way.
There's nothing wrong with taking some ideas out of these particular methods, but there's things. I thought you were going to ask me which one is right, which one is the best.
I don't think there's a right.
And I was going to give you the most annoying answer. I had an answer prepared in my head, but you would have found so irritating. I said it's all of them and it's none of them, because they've all got pros and cons to them. Yeah, especially keto. Like I tried keto, I lost so much so quickly. I tried vegan for crying out loud just because I was curious. I was on that for like 4 or 5 months, and there was some undesirable changes in there, but there were also some slightly less than desirable, So I tried a lot of stuff, dude. I've done a lot of experimenting on my body without getting dangerous, if you know what I mean. So I tried them all, and there's aspects of some that are phenomenal, and there's other aspects of others that you kind of think, where did you get that from? Especially you just mentioned keto or keto, which however you want to pronounce it. Like, do you know the statistics, like the ratio of protein you're supposed to have in a keto diet? Because obviously the carbs is meant to be zero. Yeah. Essentially. That's one clue I'll give you.
60-40 or 70-30?
No. It's literally 10% protein, 90% fat, or 95% fat and 5% carbs, and that's being very generous. That was how it was originally designed. No one can adhere to that. No one. I mean, what you're just gonna have like a stick of butter in front of you all day. There's no way that's even achievable. So you get these like keto diets that are recommended by, I don't know, Instagram influencers or like meal service providers over here. Again, no names, and it'll say, "Oh, we offer a 30-70 split between protein and fats." And I was like, "Oh, what they called keto? That's not keto. That's just ultra low carb."
Yeah,
because keto is specifically designed to lower the protein and essentially eliminate the carbs. You're basically just consuming fat, and then the Atkins diet took from ketogenic, and they incorporated that into stage 1 of the Atkins diet. You know, I can't remember what that first stage is called, but Atkins got 3 stages to the Atkins diet, and the first one is essentially eat as much fat and protein as you can without the carbs. And people were saying, "Oh, so that's keto then?" I was like, "No, there's some ideas that have derived from keto, but no, not necessarily." Yeah. Keto is just a fancy way of saying that is your body using carbohydrates for energy, or is it using ketones for energy? Yeah. If it's ketones, you're in ketosis. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, you've done keto. If you don't have ketones in your body, and there's ways to test this, by the way, then you're not in ketosis. You've not been doing keto. Unlucky.
you know? So doing it the wrong way.
No, but there's some aspects to low carb and keto and Atkins. I take little bits from everything. I don't consider that plagiarism of the kind. I haven't even patented anything, so I don't think I'm even liable for that kind of thing. But there's good and bad parts to every diet, you know? And how are you going to tell like a middle-aged woman who's had 2 or 3 kids, maybe she's like 40, 45, how are you going to tell a middle-aged woman on Instagram who lost 30 pounds in 12 weeks that what she did is wrong? Oh. Nah, lad, who do you know that can do that? But you see all these keto stories on Instagram all the time, if you look at the hashtags, and it says 30 pounds in 12 weeks, 60 pounds in 100 days, and all this crazy stuff, you know? But they do the before and after pictures, and it's there.
Some of them are Photoshop.
But then some nutritionist will come up and say, you did that wrong. Nah, lad, she just lost all that weight. Don't tell her she did it wrong, you know? Why can't you just accept that worked for her, it might not work for you?
Yeah, true.
It might not work for everyone. But no, everyone has to say, no, I've got the answer. Buy my stuff. So, yeah, I don't claim to be like the be all and end all of like nutrition, but I've given my weight cut method to a lot of professional athletes since I derived it really in like 2014. None of them have ever missed weight, and they've pretty much all won. So, you know, I mean, not to shoot the whole trumpet, but I mean, yeah, I'll claim that. I've never had a guy miss weight ever. You know, Mike Dolce, hit me up. We'll share some ideas. But I digress.
So yeah, I guess everyone, I think, before you pick a certain diet, first you have to know your body, know what makes your body good, work better, you know, digest better, you know, burn faster. Just don't run to any first commercial. You see, oh, that diet is good, I'm gonna try it, and then you try it, and then you fail, and then I'm gonna try another one, and this is what happens here. And
without checking for allergies, that's a big thing that people don't do.
People just try tons of diets, and then it was like, I didn't lose weight because I think you're doing it the wrong way. But that's, you know, you've been doing great, man. Like you've been doing martial arts, training, nutrition. What else, man? Like, you're a man with many talent.
Well, that's flattering, but I don't know how accurate it is. I'm a musician. Actually, when I was at university, I was doing sound production and engineering.
He's a good singer, by the way.
You want a sample, don't you?
You're a good singer.
Not getting it. But no, I started playing guitar when I was like 10 years old, and I was self-taught for a little while. Then I got lessons. By that logic, I also taught myself how to play the bass. I did keyboard or piano lessons when I was a kid, so that kind of stuck with me. Could do a little bit of drums. I can hold a rhythm on the drums. I downloaded a load of like software and bought a load of software on my computers. I used to record my own songs and sometimes cover songs just for fun. But yeah, I was in bands. I actually had a song in the top of the UK Top 100 one time, a long time ago. But that was that was that one I tend to not bring
Google search.
I'm not telling you the name of the band. You wouldn't even
us.
recognize me.
I've seen the pictures and the footage. I've seen it all.
The aspects that you see right now were swapped.
A different man.
There was more hair on top and no hair here. Like, I got upside down head halfway through there somewhere.
Is that the effect of Middle East?
No, that's funny you say that, because someone said recently, there's a lad who goes to the gym with me sometimes. I just kind of see him in passing. I don't know him too well. But, you know, he said, you know, he kind of goes, Robbie. And I was like, oh, hi, man, how you doing? Shachbarik. And he's like, McGregor. And I said, what did this boy just say to me? And then, you know, my coach said, your face looks like Conor McGregor. And I looked at him and I was just like, really? And he was like, and I was like, okay. So I got my phone out. And when did Conor McGregor get famous? I'll ask you one more question. When did he get into the UFC? Have a guess.
2010?
Not quite. 2013.
Oh.
But he didn't become like a household name until like 2015, 2016. That was when everyone in the world knew who McGregor was. But before that, before the UFC, he used to shave his head. And when he first got to the UFC, he had this crazy mohawk mullet that he came in with. So that was 2013. I had this same get up in 2012. Short on the back and sides, a little bit quiffed at the top, and the beard shaped to my face. I've been doing that since 2012, and I'm too bloody boring to change it because I can't find another style that suits me any better.
I remember last year you were in a fight, and two guys were behind me, and it was like, this guy looks like McGregor. And I was like, and he fights like McGregor, and yeah, he's acting like McGregor.
Is it because I'm white? Might be. But yeah, no, I got that a lot. I actually got mistaken for Conor McGregor a couple of times when I first arrived here. But that was when he was just reaching not even peak of his fame, and I looked a little younger. I say McGregor did look a little younger as well. That is like 5 years ago now. So yeah, and at the time, because when you first get to a sunny country that's hot, you spend a lot more time in the sun. But when you're born and raised here or you've been here a while, it's just kind of like, oh, look, blue skies, this again. So you're going to get a little bored of it.
Yeah, true.
So, but when I first got here, it was like, the sun's out, I'm going for a walk. Like, who does that really? Like, I'll go for, do you know what I'll do? I'll go for a walk.
Especially in June, July, yeah.
No, that's where you go for a walk in a mall. That's why I think that's one of my leading theories as to why your malls are so big. Because nobody can run outside.
The problem is people go to the mall and just sit. They don't walk.
Well, where have you just been? Coffee. You want to go coffee? Yes. Let me just go. Okay.
Let's
coffee.
try another
Great.
coffee.
Yeah. Another sandwich, another cake.
Yeah. So,
good old Kuwait.
How do you find life in Kuwait? You're also married.
I am.
You're also married. So, how do you find life in Kuwait? Do you recommend that to foreigners to come to Kuwait, to work into Kuwait, or what's your opinion about it?
Depends on the individual. Like, if you'd have known me, and I won't go into detail because I don't want to incriminate myself, but if you'd have known me a few years ago, you'd have never thought I'd be the kind of guy that would settle into a culture like this.
Yes.
It's and you got to, even compared to other Islamic cultures or even other dry countries, the culture here in Kuwait is so unique. Like, everyone's about like clout and recognition and likes on Instagram, but also like the Islamic background also makes people very modest, or at least on the surface. So it's like, is it modest or is it clout chasing? Like, I don't know what it is, but even on Instagram, like 99% of anyone who's Kuwaiti or even half Kuwaiti, they perceive themselves as pretty classy on social media,
Yeah, true.
And and this is the mistake that a lot of people in the West make as well. They think all Islamic cultures are alike. Like, if they're like the Arabs, they're Muslim, they're basically the same. Yeah. No, Kuwait's got a very unique culture to it. So it depends how well that any potential expats think that they would blend into a culture like that. But personally, I was unsure. Like, I knew it was a dry country. I knew it was a very hot country. Everyone told me that there was nothing to do. Like, I'm not an idiot. I went on forums. I didn't come in completely blind. I went on forums. Everyone was like, don't come here. There's nothing to do. I was like, okay, what can't you do? What's banned in Kuwait? What are you not allowed to do? And they were like, bars, clubs, and pubs.
But that's, you can.
And I was like, well, what else? So what else do they ban? And they were like,
that's it.
No replies. And I was like, do they have cinemas? Yeah, okay. Do they have bowling alleys? Yeah. Do they have beaches? Yeah. Do they have social clubs? Yeah. Do they have malls? Yeah. Do they have shops? Yeah. So the only thing they don't have is bars and clubs? Yeah. Like, oh no, how dare you? Does anyone over here really want them? Yeah. Can you imagine the driving if they did?
I don't think,
No, thank you. I'm good, man. So, I mean, to say that there's nothing to do, like, what do you do at home? Westerners, this is addressed to you, by the way. Like, what do you do at home? Like, do you go drinking? Do you go drinking every day? No. Yeah. So what would you do on a day where you're not drinking?
Go to work. You
go and do that. Yeah.
There's so many things to do, actually.
Yeah.
Especially the last few years. There's a lot of projects in Kuwait. There's a lot of things to do. Mm-hmm. Every year there's something new. There's racing. There's malls. There's scientific center. There's so many things to do. But I guess some people are just trying to find a way. Just I don't want to go there. If it's dry, it doesn't suit me.
Then take a 30-minute flight to a neighboring country which does have it.
Yeah, true.
Because there's a lot of them. That'd be my recommendation. But honestly, like, adapting for me, like, I was as skeptical as anyone when I first got here.
That's normal, I guess. You're going to a new culture, a new society, everything
you have to
is
be.
new. Yeah.
You have to be, for sure. You have to keep an open mind. But then I think maybe 3 to 4 weeks into living here, I messaged everyone at home saying, I ain't coming home, And they were like, yeah, okay, Rob. Rob saying he's not going to come home. I'll give it a year. And 5 years later, here I am, and I've tied the knot with a local. So, that was unexpected. Definitely wouldn't have predicted that 5 years ago, but it's not a decision I regret in the slightest.
Life is full of surprises.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. Because you have to understand as well, like, if we're going to touch upon, like, the culture a little bit. Now, this I'm going to say that this isn't the opinion of myself, but this is just like, everyone knows that stereotypes exist. Doesn't make them true, but you have to acknowledge that stereotypes exist. Like, I don't know, Chinese are bad drivers. That's a stereotype. I've never been to China. I don't know whether that's real, but that is something that's spoke about.
Lovely country. I've been there. Very lovely country.
You walked along the Great Wall of China, right?
Yep. lovely country and lovely people.
Good Lord, man. It's something I'd like to do eventually.
Bad food, yes.
Yeah, Chinese food in the West is not how they actually eat in China. But obviously, getting back to that, like Islamic culture, how it's perceived on Western media, you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
You already know.
Trust me.
It's the people who wrap towels around their heads and hold AK-47s.
Yeah.
And that was all we saw, because every time that Islamic culture was brought to light, it was, one, usually for the wrong reasons, and two, it was because,
Stop watching TV. Go do your research. Meet people, and you'll find out the truth. You don't need to look at TV. Oh, that's what you said, so it's true. No.
But yeah, everyone wants to go to Bali. That's in a Muslim country. Everyone wants to go to Kuala Lumpur. That's in a Muslim country.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to go to Dubai or Abu Dhabi. That's in a Muslim country. Like, I wonder how many racist people are getting annoyed by this right now. But so it was a big eye opener for me when I got here, and I realized that I already had a feeling anyway. It's not like I hadn't met a Muslim before. Especially when I was at university, we had a lot of people come from the more immigrant populated areas of Manchester and London and Birmingham. Like Birmingham especially. Like Birmingham is like, but I would go as far as to say, especially in the city centre, there's probably more black and brown people than there is white.
Yeah.
So every person I met from Birmingham, apart from the handful,
just like London, if you go there, it's full
exactly,
it's all Arabs.
And it's known for being multicultural now. And I don't. Brexit would lead you to have a different opinion. Let's not even go there. But no one has a problem with that multiculturalism on the whole.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
You meet people from different places. You get to learn. You get to, different cultures also could make you humble.
Well, I mean, look at Kuwait. You're outnumbered, boy.
We're exposed to everywhere.
Like even 2/3 are outnumbered, I think. Like 1/3 of the population is Kuwaiti, and the other 2/3 are expatriates.
Yeah.
And I think 1 million of them are from India. That was a recent statistic that I heard recently.
There's nothing wrong with, interacting with different cultures, different people, different race. It's wonderful. You get to learn, meet interesting people, wonderful people, but stereotype and stupid people.
I mean, there's 7 billion of us on the planet. I mean, you can't make a judgment about the entire race.
Stupid people. This is what gets everything.
Not even stupidity, dude, but mostly like ignorance. And I know it's such an easy word to throw out where you say, "Oh, you're ignorant," but like, how else do you define it? Like, you make a sweeping judgment about an entire nation or an entire religious belief or an entire group of people. Like, that's ignorance. Like by definition, if you're talking about judgments, that is ignorance. So you can't base it on that. And I met enough Muslims at university to realize that I met one guy who was Muslim and didn't speak a word of Arabic. His mother was from Sierra Leone, and his father was from, I want to say, either Kenya or Nigeria, something like that. I'd never met anyone from Sierra Leone before. I thought that was fascinating.
I don't think I.
No, right?
Yeah. Maybe, but
even over here, like you don't find many of them. But I actually, he was half Sierra Leonean. I don't actually know the terminology, but yeah, and he used to carry a Quran around with him. Never read it, and he never preached it at anyone. He was never like, Allahu Akbar, like you have to follow it. No, he never did that.
Yeah, it was
he
his
never
own
did that
thing.
at all.
It was his own thing.
Yeah, but we spoke about it, and if we were out and about, like on the university campus or anything, and people were drinking, he'd just get himself an orange juice or a Coca-Cola.
Okay, that's good to know.
So it wasn't even an issue really. So. Yeah, you can't make sweeping statements about an entire nation. Like if people say travel broadens the mind, I think meeting people from different cultures broadens the mind more.
Of course.
Because you can gain so many different types of perspective,
I guess the difference is when you travel there, you're going to watch everything, know everything, understand everything. But when you meet people, this is where you build a connection. This is where you understand more. But it's all about, depends on the person.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Some people are open, understanding, and meeting and knowing, and some people are just gonna call them stupid.
Well, yeah, we'll just rule it out as stupid people, ignorant people.
I would like to thank you so much.
My pleasure, dude.
To be with me here on this first episode.
I would like to thank you for inviting me.
I had fun. Enjoyed every single minute,
and I hope you guys did too.
Oh, you have to like it, and
you do.
And we talked about many things, and to be honest, I started knowing even more stuff about you I didn't know. But
Complex, man. I got layers. What can I say?
I hope everyone liked it. I hope everyone enjoyed it. This is our first episode, and many more are coming on the way. And we had fun. Please just show some love and support. Follow our account on Instagram at talk.feed. Our YouTube channel are coming soon also, and other social media platforms. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.
Like and subscribe.